Welcome to Consent Conversations with Joyce and Nina. I'm Joyce Short. I'm the author of Your Consent, The Key to Conquering Sexual Assault, and I'm the CEO of the Consent Awareness Network. And my co-host is Nina Lucas. She's the Chief of Staff for the Consent Awareness Network, and she's the Chief Consent Outreach Ambassador for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So welcome, Nina.
It's good to be here, Joyce, and that's a good segue into talking about our trip to Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. It's just kind of interesting that you happen to be the ambassador for Pennsylvania. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I am. I'm about an hour outside of Philadelphia.
Yeah,
so.
Just unfortunate that this happened in your state.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully we can take these lemons and turn them into lemonade.
Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do.
Exactly. So we were in Pennsylvania with a lot of the people that had been harmed by Bill Cosby. We were there with Lily Bernard and Victoria Valentino, Stacy Pinkerton, as well as some additional folks that came to give them some support. And it was so impressive to see the efforts that were made by Bird Milliken, who has united the sister survivors for Cosby, which is what the survivors call themselves, and to bring everyone together in solidarity. So a big shout out to Bird for her efforts in doing so. And it was really very, very painful to see really the struggles that they've gone through in dealing not only with what they had to go through in order to secure justice, but now in rehashing and reliving this circumstance, now that society and the justice system has literally turned against them and invalidated the little bit of milestone that they had gained. The fact that that society doesn't give you credibility is a very, very painful thing when you've been defiled.
Absolutely. They were talking a lot about how their pain has been amplified by this very misguided and poor decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court.
Yeah, and poor because, quite frankly, there doesn't really seem to be any evidence to support the decision that the Supreme Court made. They claimed that he had been given immunity by Bruce Castor, the prosecutor at the time. But all evidence points to him not having immunity. I think Nikki Wiesen-C-Egan, in her book Chasing Cosby, actually wasn't. I don't recall if it was actually in her book, but subsequently, she's been very clear that in the state of Pennsylvania, one must have an actual sign-off by a judge in order to give immunity, and it makes sense. Right? If you were the attorney representing Mr. Cosby, would you be so ignorant that you would allow your client to admit guilt in that circumstance without a signed document proving that he had immunity? It just flies in the face of common sense.
I agree. It doesn't really pass the smell test. And as you know, Bruce Castor's father was very much involved in selling or purchasing, rather, the estate that Cosby lives in now in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. So something doesn't seem right. And I also wanted to point out that what's been happening here in the Commonwealth is that two state senators, one of them is mine, Steve Santarciero, and another one is Senator Lisa Baker, have announced that they want to take action, legislative action, to prevent whatever happened in the Cosby case that led to his release and winning this appeal from ever happening again. Even though, of course, one of the justices said, this is such a unique and niche situation that I can never see this occurring again. So I think that, of course, and we think that better time spent would be for the Pennsylvania legislature to codify consent in Pennsylvania. That would be a very welcome response to this whole Cosby fiasco, and especially the appeals ruling. So hopefully we will be pursuing that with those legislators and trying to get back on track the bill that was to be introduced in Harrisburg defining consent in April 2020, before, or rather just when the COVID pandemic crisis began. So hopefully we can get that all back on track and get those
Wonderful.
legislators focused on where they really need to put their time and attention.
Right. In fact, in the week preceding the Survivor Vigil, I received a note from Representative Wendy Thomas, and she supported the fact that what happens in New York in supporting the bill that we have currently pending, A6540, what happens in New York will affect every state across the country.
Absolutely. Legislators always look to other states and what they've done, so they don't have to recreate the wheel, and they could be more confident in introducing bills with similar language. So we are going to be working on getting that back on track.
Absolutely. And in fact, we do have right now a senator in New Jersey who has committed to also introducing the language for A6540. And it's actually A6540A because it's been amended. And the bill basically says, very simply, that consent is freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Can we make it any simpler? Really?
Yeah.
So
just
easy.
like your button says there. Your button says FGKIA?
FGKIA.
Yeah.
My button. Here we go. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement was the definition for consent when Bill Cosby preyed on Andrea Constand, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. She would have been able to go to the police. The authorities would have taken action. He would have been arrested. Hopefully, he would have been convicted and would have spared a whole lot of people a whole lot of pain and heartache.
Absolutely. And that is why it's so important to define consent in the law. I often have been thinking of late here, because of everything that's been going on, what would have happened if consent was properly defined all the way back in 2005, and how Andrea Constand would have had the backup of that ironclad definition and legislation to help her and to help the authorities understand that she was violated and she did not consent. So it's very powerful to read her words, her statement at the vigil.
Yes, you did such a great job. You did such a great job of doing that.
You're very kind. But going back to the listening to the survivors, it's so powerful to hear in their own words how things have affected them, how this experience has been so difficult for them. And I wanted to invite our viewers to check out the podcast Chasing Cosby, based on the book by Nikki Weisensee-Egan, pardon me. It's so powerful to hear so many, and very devastating. It's very difficult to listen to hear so many accounts in the survivor's own voice.
Yeah.
It really is. We have to remember.
It's very impactful.
Yes, we have to remember what they endured so we can go on to continue to fight to change the laws and to make it easier for other people to come forward and to actually get the justice that they deserve.
Absolutely. So we're going to roll the Consent Awareness Network's portion of the Survivor Vigil that took place on July the 10th. We hope that our viewers will listen carefully to the three things that we're recommending in this clip. The first being to actually sign the petition that supports A6540A, because again, supporting the law in New York will actually echo throughout the halls of justice across the country and around the world, make it easier for this legislation to be passed in states in addition to New York. And another thing that we ask is that you contact your legislator, demand change. We're here to help you. We can put together a team that will actually speak with you, with your legislator in a Zoom call and get the point across and begin the process with you. In fact, we did this recently, as you'll see on our clip, with women in New Jersey, and we now have the bill pending that's going to be introduced in New Jersey. And also, take a look at Your Consent for Kids cartoon, so that you can teach the very simple poem to your children that will enable them to grow through life knowing exactly what consent actually means. So three steps that you can take in order to take action and get consent defined in the laws and make the world a safer place. So here's the clip, folks.
Lastly, we're going to hear from Joyce, who's another advocate, because she can talk about the work that she's doing with consent laws. And then after Joyce, we have open mic. All right, Joyce. Come on, ladies.
Okay.
You don't have to say anything, just talk.
Can y'all hear me?
Scream it.
Okay. I'm not as loud as Bird, but I'm going to try. Okay. So, folks, we all recognize that our justice system is broken. We recognize it big time. And we can thank God for Me Too and Time's Up because they've raised awareness about the sexual assault problem. But raising awareness alone doesn't solve the problem. We need a solution. And defining consent properly in our laws is that solution. Consent is not a mystery. It's freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement.
What is it?
Freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. Model Penal Code tells us so. Nuremberg Code tells us so. General Data Protection Regulation tells us so. But somehow, when we go to process sexual assault predators, our brains go into the murky zone and we don't recognize what consent is. Why is that? Folks, if the laws of Pennsylvania recognized what consent was when Cosby preyed on Andrea Constand and everybody else, they would have been able to go to the police and they would have gotten action that held Cosby accountable. But instead, they screwed up so badly that we're all standing here with all of you in solidarity to get the world and get the word changed. So everybody, we need you to help support us to do that. So folks, you know, the Weinstein case and the Cosby case gave us some lessons to learn, and we have to apply them. In the Cosby case and the Weinstein case, both of them, 3 trials. In each one, the jury asked the judge, what's the definition for consent? And the judge said, use your common sense. Folks, excuse me, but using your common sense means that every single jury has to actually recreate the wheel. And the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution grants us all equal protection under the law. How do we get equal protection if we don't understand the most pivotal word in the in a statute on sexual assault or rape? So folks, we folks at the Consent Awareness Network have been zooming across the country in order to get legislative change on this issue. We've been talking to legislators here in Pennsylvania. We've been talking to legislators in New York. And our allies like Andrea Constand,
That's right.
Tara-Leigh Wolf, where are you, Tara-Leigh? Jessica Mann, Mimi Haley, they've joined with us on all of these Zoom calls to get our legislators off the dime. And I have good news for you. In the state of New York, Assembly Member Rebecca Seawright has actually introduced a bill, and you're going to see it right here if you get on our QR. It's Assembly Bill A6540A, and it states, consent is a freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement.
Yeah. Consent is
Freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement. So, here in Pennsylvania, just the other day, from one of the legislators that we've been talking to, I got a note from her that says, that what happens in New York, that New York's ability to codify consent will open the door for every state across the country. So please help us by supporting our bill. Use the QR, sign our petition. In the words of the late, great Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we change nothing until we change our laws. So we're going to ask you to do 3 things today. The first, sign our petition, because we want that bill to turn into law and echo throughout the halls of justice around the world. The second thing we're going to ask you to do is to call your legislators. Share this information with everyone you know. Call your legislators. If you need help doing that, just contact us, Consent Awareness Network. We have a young woman in New Jersey that contacted us about 3 months ago. Her name is Crystal Beleza, and she couldn't be here today. She was actually with us in the press conference that introduced A6540 to the press in New York. But unfortunately, she wasn't able to be here today. Crystal, we worked together. She called her legislator, and now we have a senator in New Jersey who has agreed to introduce exactly the same bill that we have in New York in New Jersey. So pretty soon we're going to come back to you with another QR code so that you can sign the petition to get this done in New Jersey. And the last thing that we're going to ask you to do, you know, we need to grow a generation of consent-aware children. And we, the Consent Awareness Network, we have a cartoon for kids, and it's called Your Consent for Kids. And I'm going to recite a little poem for you that comes from that cartoon. And we need you to teach it to your children and share that cartoon. And it goes like this. Consent is freely given when you know the facts and agree. So don't force or trick or try to scare when you want consent from me. So please, repeat after me. Consent means freely given.
Consent means freely given.
When you know the facts and agree.
When you know the facts and agree.
So don't force or trick or try to scare.
Don't force or trick or try to scare.
When you want consent from me.
When you want consent from me.
So folks, I'd like to introduce you to our Chief of Staff for the Consent Awareness Network, who has a message for you from Andrea Constant.
Right, yes.
Nina Lucas, one of the most.
Yeah, actually.
Can you spell your name for the press?
Yes.
Spell your name for the press?
Okay.
My name is Nina Luke. Oh, you. Go. Yeah, of course.
I'm Joyce Short. That's Joyce, Short, SHORT. And folks, I'm the author of Your Consent, The Key to Conquering Sexual Assault. And I'm the CEO of the Consent Awareness Network. And you can see that my buddy over here has a little problem with her hand, so I'm going to try and hold the mic for her.
Thank you, Joyce. My name is Nina Lucas, NINALUCAS. I just want to thank everybody here for showing up and standing with survivors. As I said, my name is Nina Lucas, and I serve as a Consent Outreach Ambassador for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It is my honor to read the following statement by survivor and Cosby plaintiff, Andrea Constant, in support of Assembly Bill A6540, defining consent in penal law. I was shocked to hear that New York and Pennsylvania have no definition for consent in their laws. I learned this by the Cosby and Weinstein trials. Both judges could not respond to the question when the jurors asked for the definition. Instead, they told the juries to use their best common sense. The foreperson for the Cosby jury was aware of the definition for consent in General Data Protection Regulation, which is international law. GDPR states that consent is freely given, informed agreement.
We need every jury to understand this definition in order to convey equal protection to everyone. As a healthcare provider, I am required to get each client's consent. And consent in medical treatment is defined as freely given informed agreement. The definition for consent does not change depending on what you're consenting to. Nothing less than defining consent as freely given, knowledgeable, and informed agreement will protect the residents of New York and every state from sexual assault. Society desperately needs this transformational reform in our laws before one more person is defiled by a sexual predator who fails to grasp what consent actually is because our laws fail to tell them so. Thank you.
So I just wanted to let you know that in New York, we have introduced this bill under general law. That means that it is not only going to apply to sexual assault and rape, it's going to apply to sex trafficking, to coercive control, to revenge porn, to every crime that exists in penal code. And we have a buddy here who's done our legal snooping for us and found 162 times that the word consent appears in penal code without a single definition. Defining consent under general law will stop that from happening. Consent never changes. It's always the same, no matter what you apply it to. So thanks for listening, and let's work together to make the world a safer place.